Welcome! We are back. It is 12 noon Pacific, and this is today's episode of the DoughDr. We've got some questions to start, but before we get going, I just want to say welcome, bakers. I'm your chef and host, Chef Colette, and your resident baking expert. So we're going to break it down and answer the baking questions that came in over the last 2 weeks. So, yeah, let's get started. And after questions, and of course if you have questions, oh, by the way, please let me know where you are logging on from and what you're baking this weekend. And the other thing we're going to get into is our baking goals for the fall. So, all right, so let's get started. Oh, least I forget, demo is cheesecake, and we'll get to that in a moment. All right, so I wanted to talk about the questions that came in. We were dark last week because it was Labor Day, and I hope you had a wonderful holiday, sort of, gave the end of summer a big send-off, and also, hopefully, if you were in the grip of a heat wave like we were in Los Angeles, I hope it's passed. Ours passed in the night, and thank God, it's so much better here. And then this week, Queen Elizabeth passed, and I started thinking about some of the very famous British desserts. She had a favorite cake, so maybe as a post we'll revisit that. It's actually just a combination of lovely, store-bought butter cookies, a very specific brand, of course, and milk chocolate ganache. So stay tuned. We'll see if we can do something we can do some baking to commemorate her long reign. I don't know what Charles likes. Probably like zucchini cake or something. So, because he's really into his gardens. Well, we'll just have to see what happens with all that. All right, I digress. That was our news update. Now, questions. Okay? So, do I have some questions? Okay. Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Rice Krispie Treats from Pistol Packing Mama. Hey, nothing wrong with Rice Krispie Treats. They go together nice and easy. And man, they are so good. So that's totally fine. It was so hot that I went a good 5 days without baking. It was just too hot to turn on the stove. For my day job, I did have to a couple of times because I have live demos a few times a week for work. But I did feel that I was going to faint and that I was sweating on a professional level, truly. All right, so our first question is what can you substitute for cream of tartar? And cream of tartar, you guys know, anytime we're making a meringue, we often see it in the ingredient list. So, hold on. Here it is. Now, when you buy it, this ingredient has the longest shelf life of any baking ingredient ever. 5 years. If it's kept in a cool, dry cupboard, it keeps its punch for 5 years. Oh, I have a little tip for you. When you buy spices, or, I do this when I open things and put them in the refrigerator, like pasta sauce or whatever, take a marker and write the date that you opened it up on the label. That is, because we're never going to remember. I mean, unless you're some sort of a genius, you're not going to look at your cream of tartar and say, oh, that was February 19th, 2018 that I bought this at Smart & Final and I opened it. No. That's going to happen. If you do have a memory like that, please let me know. All right, but what if you don't have this and you really want to make it yourself? Or you really want to, use the... Uh-oh. Sorry, you guys, I thought I thought I smelled something burning. So that was my dramatic pause. But nothing's burning, everything's fine. You want to use, you don't have cream of tartar, you know there's benefits, what do you substitute? The only substitute would be a little lemon juice. I feel we've had this question before, but let's say you're making a meringue. You just want to put a little lemon juice on a paper towel and wipe out your mixer bowl, and that is enough. Or if you don't like that, what you can do is add like a half teaspoon, quarter teaspoon per egg. So let's say for a half batch recipe of macarons, be like a half teaspoon of lemon juice. Ooh, I had one more thought pop into my brain. I did get a really great tip. I know many of you love to make meringues. When you have your regular cream of tartar and you've labeled the date when you opened it, this is an extra step, but make sure you either take out a little bit of the egg white and mix the cream of tartar in there and then add it to the rest of the egg white, or break this up in the egg whites before starting the mixer, because it really, really does like to clump. All right, so cream of tartar again, and then let me see, I've got comments coming. No, nothing pressing, so we're going to push on. So the next question came from one of our bakers who sent photos of her sourdough starter asking if it was dead. And the answer is no, it's not dead. It's actually okay. This heat was really challenging for if you were in a place where it was really hot. It was very challenging for, I feel, for sourdough starters. Sophia, she's so exhausted. If she could talk to me, she'd say, "Colette, put the lid back on and put me back in the fridge. It's just too friggin' hot." I could not revive her for baking, to get her to the level of baking, to save my life. And you know, this is my total jam in what I do. So I had to stop. And once I got her, just kind of stable, I just put her back in the refrigerator. And when it legit cools down, and the humidity here kind of evens out, because for Los Angeles, it's super humid here. It feels like Chicago. Then we're going to try again. So to answer the question, if you have a little bit of bubbles, or if you have kind of a grayish liquid around the edge, it's okay. When there is a problem is if there's any reddish liquid. You know how like when cottage cheese or ricotta cheese goes bad in the back of the fridge? It's happened to all of us. I mean, all of us. No matter how good a chef you are, well, maybe not you, but I know it's happened to me. I should just speak for myself, but I think it's almost universal. Those are spoilage yeast microorganisms, and that means somehow your starter got tainted. So you'll stop, throw it out, clean everything really well, and start over. I know we get really romantic about our starters, but honestly, you can make a really great sourdough starter in 9 days. So I love Sophia. She's my girl. She's 57 years old, this fall. But I know that if something really happens to her, then I can move on and build a new starter, and we'll just go from there. All right, so that's the sourdough starter. You're looking for red. In a nutshell, you're looking for red, and if it smells putrid, because that's the descriptor, then throw it out and start over. Oh, by the way, when you do wash your containers for sourdough starter, try not to use regular dish soap. If you can get away with cleaning them with just hot water and then rinsing them really well, it's better, because the quaternary ammonium compounds in regular dish soap inhibit fermentation. And whenever we're working with a natural starter, right? Like, it's such a delicate microclimate in this jar right now. Super delicate, super fragile, that if we introduce even a few microns of quaternary ammonium compound, we can inhibit our starter really taking off. Okay? I want you to clean, don't get me wrong, but just watch the dish soap. If you're using sort of like a more natural, earth-friendly, just check, that's probably fine. Just check the label. QAC, quaternary, that's an easy word to remember because it's so weird. Ammonium, you'll remember ammonia, and then compounds. All right, so we got that question. I'll put this together later because it's kind of a puzzle. And then I'll put her back in the fridge. Okay, last question before we sail into demo is, and I thought this one was kind of interesting. Chef, can I make my own self-rising flour? My biscuit recipe calls for self-rising flour, and I can't find it. Okay, so yeah, we have had some shortages with the supply chain, and COVID kind of messed up everything. So here we go. For 1 cup of all-purpose flour, which would be 120 grams, you're going to add a teaspoon of cream of tartar and a half teaspoon of baking soda, and you're going to sift that together 1, 2, 3 times, and then you're going to have self-rising flour. If you need those numbers again, just DM me. All right, that's it for questions. Now let's sail on to demo, and to make this cheesecake, I'm going to use my DLC7 Cuisinart food processor. And she's just a beauty. I don't know, I think she's like 34 years old now. I may struggle a little bit, but it'll be funny. So sometimes the talk is a little problematic. So for this cheesecake, it's just basically got 5 ingredients. So it's simple and put together. And I propose to you bakers that we kind of do a bake-along. So I'm going to demo how to do the base. And next week, I'll show you how to get it out of the pan and garnish it. So if you've got a little bit of time and you haven't used your food processor for a while, then give it a go. And also, I'll put mixer directions on the website. It'll be on bakingwithcolette.com under recipes and blog posts. And I'll have it posted most likely by tomorrow night. So it's fun. And there'll be flavor variations too. We talk about this on the show all the time. The idea of having a master recipe, learning that technique, getting your confidence up, having some great results, and then customizing it and making it your own. I love that. Put that in the comments if that interests you. Instead of having a million recipes, you've got your master recipes and you just riff off of them. So that's what we're going to do here. Now, a story, of course, very quickly. So back in the day, when I was teaching at Le Cordon Bleu, and I see I have some Le Cordon Bleu people here on in the audience, the cheesecake recipe in the pastry program, patisserie program, it had at least 12 ingredients in it. And it was really loose. And what does that mean when a batter is loose? It means it's really liquidy. and a little bit challenging to control. Now, we don't want a stiff cheesecake batter for sure, but this one was challenging to say the least. And it was good, but it wasn't great. So I vowed that once, when I could, I would create an easy peasy cheesecake recipe that was delicious with minimal ingredients. So let's go. All right. The first thing you're going to do is prepare your pan. Now, if you're going to unmold the cheesecake, let's say, well, you got two choices. This is a springform pan. This is a cake pan. And you can see I've put my crust in the cake pan, and there's a piece of parchment underneath. If you use the springform pan, no parchment, because the base of this pan is going to become the bottom of your cake. You're going to serve from it. That is the easiest. I mean, unless you, well, if you absolutely have to get the cake out of the pan, then it's a little bit of a challenge. It would involve making a parchment sling. But what I really want to show you, and this is something that's really, I think, very useful. What I want to show you next week is how to use a torch to get cakes out of the pan. One thing that, we buy things, like if you bought one of these to caramelize creme brulee, and that's all you use it for, oh, no. We can use this for so much more, all right? So I'm going to use the cake pan, and I'm going to unmold it with the torch next week. If you're using, you might be like, Colette, I have a springform pan. I bought it specifically for cheesecake, and I'm using my springform pan. Great, but a cheesecake has to be baked in a water bath, and one of our bakers asked why yesterday, so we'll cover that within demo. But the problem is, a springform pan, well, it's not a problem, but what you have to do is triple wrap this pan in foil before you drop it into the water bath. If you don't, that water is going to seep in and get your cake soggy. The only time when we're making cheesecakes that we don't usually use a water bath is if you're doing the little cupcake cuties. They don't take that long to bake, so we can usually get away without it. But any pan with any kind of a surface area, a cheesecake is a baked custard, you need a water bath. Because what screws up our cheesecakes, and put it in the comments if you've ever cracked a cheesecake or ever baked a cheesecake and had it crack, what screws it up is the temperature fluctuations. So the water bath acts as an insulator so that the cheesecake heats up slowly, and then the baking processes kick in nice and calm, nice and slow, and we get a great result. I've been making cheesecakes, like seriously studying cheesecakes for longer than I want to tell you, like obsessed. So I know that, I'm steering you on the right path with your cheesecakes. I would never do otherwise. Okay, so now, oh, and the other thing that is not in a lot of crust recipes is that once you get it in the pan, you want to bake it at 350 for a couple minutes. What this does is it dissolves the sugar and sets the crust so that it's kind of like a nice matrix, and your cheesecake bottom will cut better. Also, graham cracker crumbs can taste a little raw, so that baking them kind of toasts them a little bit. And you can use packaged graham cracker crumbs, or you can grind up graham crackers. It did not happen. but I noticed that Trader Joe's has really yummy looking cinnamon sugar graham crackers. Feel free to use those too. Also, you can customize your cookie crust to your filling. I promised you flavor variations. You could use Oreos for a chocolate cheesecake crust. That would be super yummy. Ginger snaps for a pumpkin crust. And then lemon butter cookies, like those, I don't know, I'm thinking of Pepperidge Farm makes a lemon cookie for like a lemon cheesecake. You guys are awfully creative. All you need to know is the technique. So the crust can be customized as well. So this is how easy this is. I have my old Cuisinart here. Let's name her Dottie because she's getting a little Dottie in her old age. So I love her. And even when I worked at Sur La Table and I had a great discount and I could have gotten a sexy new food processor, I didn't because I love her. All right, so you hear a lot about softening cream cheese. So the best way to do it is cut it up and let it sit out at room temperature for an hour. Now we do need to be careful. Cream cheese, it's cheese. It has protein in it. It cannot stay out forever. So 1 hour at room temperature is good. And we're going to dump it in. Okay, let me get the other one. And I'm going to scrape the foil because you need every bit of this cream cheese. And this recipe makes an 8-inch. I can scale it up for you. It'll be in the post. Let me know if you have a 9-inch springform pan or a 10-inch. Let me know what pan size you'll be using in the comments, okay? Jump in there, let me know. But this batch right here, 1 pound of cream cheese, 2 packages, is gonna make an 8-inch cake. Oh, here's a tip. I repeat myself, I'm like a minor bird. But if you're ever wondering how big your pan is, gentlemen, I don't have really a measurement for you. But ladies, if we're adults, our hand is usually 8 inches from the base of the wrist to the top of the middle finger. So you're like, gosh, what size pan is this? You can just put your hand, oh, that looks like 8 inches. And you don't have to go running around for a ruler. Great. All right, pistol packing mama, you've got a 9 and a 10-inch. So the flavor variations and any increased amounts to accommodate your pans will be at the bottom of the post. And I'll put a note at the top of the post so that you can find it, okay? Let's see. Tatiana, okay, got it, 9 inches. Excellent. Okay, so you'll need a little bit more cream cheese. You might have a little extra cream cheese hanging around. So you'll just have to make a batch of bagels. Okay, so now what we're going to do is she's old, so I have to spin her around. Oh, and I have her backwards. There we go. I would love to do a show where I made everything in the Cuisinart or food processor. It would include savory though. It would be wild. Just like back in the day when we made everything in the Cuisinart. All right, you're going to take your spatula and you're going to scrape down. And if your cream cheese was room temperature, this is going to look so good. And then you're going to dump in your sugar and we're going to mix again. Come on, Dottie. scrape down, and add the eggs. The eggs are room temperature too. We don't want any shocking of these ingredients, you know. And then I'm going to add, this is just going to be a base, and I'm going to let my toppings really lead the day. So a little vanilla. I'll have the measurement, don't worry. If pouring makes you nervous, I get it. Okay, so it's like 1 minute, maybe 2 minutes. If your cream cheese is on the cooler side, the mix is going to take longer. And then if you're working in the mixer, you're going to be scraping down more, and you'll be using the paddle. And as I said, I know not everyone has a food processor, but if you do, and especially if you have a DLC 7 Pro from 30 years ago, dig it out of the garage. Give her a whirl. Make this cheesecake. All right, so let's go through the variations because we're at that point. So if you were going to do a chocolate cheesecake, you would have melted 3 to 4 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate and cooled it, and you would add it now. If you wanted a pumpkin cheesecake, it would be 3 ounces of like Libby's pumpkin, and you would throw that in there. You would add 3/4 of a teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice, and then a little bit of extra vanilla. And that would be your pumpkin cheesecake. Okay, so now and I find too, I got to comb, just like the mixer, you do have to check the bottom. Especially like on this old girl, she kind of, sometimes it sticks on the bottom. Okay. Oh, I just did something that I don't think I've shown you guys. When you've scraped down, right? And your spatula, some of you may have seen this, those of you who, my culinary school, whoops, I stabbed I can't believe I did that. There we go. You take your spatula out of the, whatever it is, mixer bowl, food processor bowl, and it's dripping, spin it. And the drip will be absorbed and you will be less messy, which we always want to be less messy. All right, so now what we do, the oven is at 350. Let me just clean my mess because it's going to make me nuts. And the first thing when you're working with a food processor is get rid of the blade. So I'm scraping the blade, and I'm going to put it to the side of the sink, not in the sink, so it gets washed separately. And then we're going to dump all this loveliness into the cake pan, and we're going to scrape every bit, so that you don't even have to rinse this work bowl. That's what it's called, the work bowl. Now your cheesecake is not going to rise. The nice thing about the food processor is we didn't really whip a lot of air into it. There we go. Okay. So now, and any mess up the side, you do want to kind of clean. And you want to do that for all cakes, because any batter is going to lift a little bit. And if you have cake batter schmutz up the side of your pan, then the batter that's trying to rise has to go around the schmutz, the cake batter schmutz, and it's not going to be as pretty. And bakers, we're all about the pretty, right? So just that, what did that take? A nanosecond. All right. I've got a 13 by 9 inch Pyrex here. And then I will fill this up halfway with hot tap water. Not cold water, not boiling water, hot tap water. And then I'm going to bake it for 40 minutes at 325. Most custards, I can't think of any exceptions, are baked at 325, nice and gentle, for 40 minutes. At the 40-minute mark, all you do is turn off the oven and you let the cheesecake sit for 30 minutes in that turned off oven. Do not open that door. Just leave it in there. And then you can take it out of the water, let it cool to room temperature, and then you can wrap it, refrigerate it for up to 3 to 4 days, and you can freeze it for up to 1 month. All right? Now, if you freeze it, you can unmold it frozen, or, you know the drill, thaw overnight in the refrigerator, and then unmold and garnish the next day. All right? So I challenge you bakers, bake a cheesecake this week. I'll have that recipe dropped tomorrow night, and then, if not sooner, make a cheesecake. Cream cheese is available. I went to 3 markets before I decided to do this post, and they had tons of it. I am no longer brand specific like I used to be when I was all precious and 2019. No, those days are over. The pandemic has been a big leveler. It will work. The most premium brand is, of course, Philadelphia cream cheese. However, they will all work just fine. And especially mixing this way, everything's going to be nice and smooth. All right, so let me check for questions, and then I will let you go. Yes, exactly, Marathon Baguette, just don't over-mix it. We do not, because, and we'll talk about that, the air, if we whip too much air into it, it's going to rise, and then it's going to fall, and then it's going to crack. Now, we can always cover cracks up, no biggie, but however, we really like it when things go well. That's why you watch this show. Yes, there are recipes using sour cream, but it's just one more thing. What the sour cream does is it makes the texture even creamier. You could add a 1/4 cup of sour cream. It's a base recipe, but I encourage you guys, try it the way it's written and then form your opinions. I have made hundreds of this cheesecake and then taught it for many years. I taught it for 8 years at the Art Institutes, and no one ever felt that it needed anything. So, and I'm also indebted to a book called The Professional Pastry Chef, because that book was the genesis for me being brave enough to realize that I could make a cheesecake really delicious without 15 ingredients. So, and then we're going to cover on molding it next week. So so what you need if you're baking in a cake pan, what you're going to need is some sort of a torch, like your creme brulee torch, and it's very helpful to have a cardboard round and plastic wrap. You'll see how I do it next week. It's easy peasy. And then the other thing that's one last thing, always one last thing. When it comes out of the oven, you take it out of the water, and it feels like it's sticking to the side of the pan. You can take a paring knife or an offset spatula, hug the side of the pan, not the cake, and just give it a spin around, and that will really help. then it'll release from the pan, and that also can be more insurance that the cake will not crack. All right? So, yes. And Patty's saying Philly comes out great for her. Well, this should be pretty golden as well. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the Dough Doctor. Any questions that come up during the week, you can always DM me. If they're urgent, I'll get to them right away. If they're not urgent, we'll save them for next week's show. And also, bakers, think about your fall baking, because next week I'd like to explore what we're thinking about for fall, because honestly, my final comment to you for our final food for thought, our baking year really starts in the fall, not at New Year's, but now. So think about your goals and what you want to do to make your baking lives that much better. Thank you. Have a lovely day. Happy baking. Bye.